For the first time in a long time, Alabama basketball is struggling under Nate Oats. Welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. Look, the SEC is competitive. Alabama knows that firsthand, obviously. They've got a 500 record so far during conference play. It doesn't get much easier, clearly. They play a really good team tonight, coached by Bucky McMillan. Texas A&M's coming to Coleman Coliseum, and it's going to give them another challenge, and they've faced a series of them. They've lost 4 of their last 7 games. They're 14-7 overall. 4-4 in the conference, as I mentioned, coming off of an embarrassing, and that's Nate Oats' word, 23-point road loss that really wasn't even that close in Gainesville. But look, if we know anything about Alabama under Oats, is that they can beat anyone. And when they've been in a similar circumstance as this one, they've made deep runs in March. So we need a guy who knows hoops, and we're lucky to have one right now. You can read his work on AL.com. You know his podcast, Scarbo Knows. We welcome back Kevin Scarbinsky. Kevin, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good, Ben. How are you?
Doing well. I'm trying to figure all this out. I need your help because we knew that Alabama was going to be different, that maybe most people thought they're not going to make an Elite Eight run. They're not going to make a Final Four run. They're not Final Four run. They're not built quite the same way that they had been, but then they get LeBaron Filan coming back. They get some transfers that make them competitive on paper, and they certainly look good out of the gate early in the season. You know, a lot's happening, obviously, with Alabama off and on the court. Let's start with on. Let's focus on the basketball for just a few minutes. Kevin, broadly, big picture, what do you see as Alabama's biggest problem right now? And second part of that, are they capable of fixing it?
Their biggest problem has been health. They have not kept the roster healthy for any consistent length of time. You know, Amari Allen came back Sunday in Gainesville, but he had missed time, and he was clearly not back to full speed. He's such an important piece of what they do. He's so versatile. He's their best rebounder. He can score it. He can defend. And you saw his absence against Tennessee the week before when Nate Oats went off for 29 points. Amari would have been the best defender to match up with him and maybe slow him down, if not stop him completely. So he's been out. Aiden Holloway's been out. LeBaron Filan missed most of the second half at Vanderbilt with something I'd never heard of before, full body cramps, as they described it. So they just haven't been able to keep the roster together. And then you integrate a player in Charles Bediako at midseason who hadn't been around for 3 years. So he's basically a stranger to the rest of the guys on the roster. They've got to learn to play together. He's done some nice things. He's actually been a positive in what he's contributed since he's been there. But I just think they haven't been healthy enough, and they haven't had enough time to learn how to play with Charles Bediako, which tells me, and this is a bit of hope for Alabama, that if they can keep people together and healthy, that as the rest of this season winds down and as they start looking toward March, they should be able to play their best basketball, whatever the ceiling is.
Kevin, they obviously did not play their best basketball in Gainesville. I'm just curious, from your vantage point, what did you see? What happened in Florida? Like, what does Todd Golden seem to have, or why does Todd Golden seem to have Nate Oats' number head-to-head at this point? Because Florida has just been pounding Alabama.
Yeah, 5 straight, and 4 of them by double figures. The last two of the 4 worst losses Nate Oats has suffered in Alabama. 22 points in the SEC tournament last year, and then 23 points on Sunday at Gainesville. Only the Oklahoma loss back in 2023 was worse. That was a 24-point defeat. Well, for one thing, Todd Golden likes bigs, and he's got the best collection of big men in the country in Thomas Houck, Alex Condon, and Ruben Chinyelu. I mean, those guys look like Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish in that game against Alabama. They just overwhelmed them inside. 72 points in the paint, which nobody in the SEC had done in 20 years, according to ESPN research. They took their game to another level. Clearly, Florida is very good, and I think they're fully capable of winning another national championship and going back-to-back like they did in 06 and 07. But they don't play that way every game. They didn't play that way against Auburn the week before when they got beat in Gainesville, and Auburn won down there for the first time in 30 years. But there's another factor here. This is something I don't think a lot of people considered when Bediako returned to the lineup. you are going to ignite every opposing team, every opposing fan base when you go on the road. Everybody wants to show the pro. Show the pro that you can play, that you're better than he is, your team's better than his team. And the fans are, of course, the Florida fans were chanting G League dropout at Bediako. That's clever. I imagine the Jungle will have a little more creativity on Saturday, maybe even more volume. And that was a great crowd in Gainesville. So now you're facing a highly motivated opponent, more highly motivated than it might have been otherwise, with a very talented roster in Florida. And you put those things together, and I use the word Stephen Pearl used to just talk about what Tennessee did to Auburn early on Saturday night when the Vols beat the Tigers. Alabama got punked. They weren't tough enough. They got hit they had a glass jaw. They got hit in the jaw, and they shattered. They didn't fight back. And Florida just kept pouring it on and pouring it on and pouring it on. And they also wanted to make Todd Golden's prediction stand up when he was asked about Bediako the week before, and he said, we'll beat him anyways. He doesn't think he should be playing, and he said, we'll beat him anyways. And he was right. They beat him anyways. So even with Bediako in the lineup, I think it was a combination of circumstances. Florida playing at a peak level of effort and intensity, and Alabama not matching it.
Well, that 72 points in the paint stat is certainly not one you want to be on the other end of. And to me, that's the most sobering part of this. I think even with the whole Bediako story and people chanting G League dropout and what Todd Golden said being proven right, that they would win anyway, Alabama's biggest problem prior to the injury bug that they caught this year was they struggle when they face elite front courts because they don't have one. And even if they make a run in March, at some point they're going to run into a brick wall that is a team that has elite big men, just as they have when they've had better teams, right? When they lost to UConn in the Final Four, when they lost to Duke in the Final Four, those teams had elite big men and put Alabama in their place, so to speak. And I think that was going to be the case this year, even before they brought in Bediako. I think he makes them a little bit better. And so on that note, the Bediako chatter has obviously died down a little bit, but you're right. They're going to hear it every single time they go into an opposing Coliseum or venue or whatever. But he's part of the team now. He's starting games. Their front court has obviously been a big issue. As I said, Aiden Sherrill is capable, but inconsistent. They're trying to get good minutes out of Noah Williamson. Keaton Bristow cannot stay healthy. He's missed several games. You had a strong column that was called 3 games, 2 losses, 1 question. Is the Bediako experiment worth it? People need to go read that if they haven't already. But Kevin, you kind of alluded to this earlier, but does Alabama look any better at that position or in the front court when Bediako is on the floor?
Well, he's been good. He scored double figures his first 2 games against Tennessee and then in the win over Missouri. And that was his best or his highest 2-game point total, higher than anything he did in his first 2 years at Alabama, going back a few years. So he's better. He's a better free throw shooter. He's a nice rim protector, something they have not had. Sherrill is not that. So he has been better, but Aiden Sherrill in particular hasn't quite figured out how to play with Charles Bediako. They've got to learn how to work together. That's what's so beautiful about Florida's front court. Their interior passing, Chinyelu to Condon to Houck, they work so well together, but they've been working together now for a couple of years. They've only been doing this for a couple of weeks at Alabama. And that's a tough ask right in the middle of SEC play. But from a basketball standpoint, Bediako has been a positive addition. It's just getting everyone else to understand how their roles may change with him in the lineup. But that is, and has been, as you pointed out, Alabama's Achilles heel. Good front courts, multiple quality bigs. Look at Arizona, the second half here in Birmingham in the non-conference schedule. Look at Purdue and Tuscaloosa earlier in the season. That has been the thing that's bothered Alabama the most. And they're not, look, there's a reason they wanted Charles Bediako to come back. And it goes beyond, we'd like him to graduate. We'd like him to get back in class. We think he's a good guy. He's a good teammate. He's a good person. And I've never heard anyone say a negative about Charles Bediako, the man. It's about whether he should play or not. So those are all nice altruistic reasons for supporting his bid to play his final semester. But at heart, it's because they needed a big man, and he's a quality big man. So I think they'll be better. The longer he plays, if he's able to play out the rest of the season, they will be better in March than they are at the beginning of February. And that's typical for a Nate Oats team.
I agree from a basketball standpoint, he's been good. I mean, he's been playing professional basketball for the last 3 years, so I would hope that we would see some improvement. But conveniently, he knows Alabama's system. He knows how to play for Nate Oats. They've got a great relationship, and he seems to fit right back in. So, whether or not he gets to continue playing remains to be seen. But for the time being, we're going to see Charles Bediako and a lot of them switching from the front court to the back court. Nate Oats never shies away, for better or worse here, Kevin, from challenging his players publicly, right? And he had some pointed things to say about LeBaron Filan's defensive effort this year, which he says has taken a major step back. But, I'm just curious, like, considering all that is required of Filan as Alabama's top offensive playmaker and oftentimes really the only guy who can create his own shot, do you think that that's asking a little bit too much of him right now? Or is he expected to be a two-way guy at an elite level?
I think this is Nate Oats seeing the potential of LeBaron Filan at his best. And Alabama under Nate Oats has been one of the most NBA-like programs in college basketball. In the system they run, in the way they develop players to get them ready for the next level. He brings in NBA assistants to his staff when his staffers go off and get head coaching jobs, which he's done an amazing job of. So he knows that if LeBaron Filan wants to be a perennial all-star, an all-NBA player over the long run, he's got to improve on the other end of the floor. There's still things he can improve offensively, but certainly on the defensive end of the floor. And guess what? Nobody's going to sugarcoat anything for LeBaron when he gets to the NBA. No one's going to tiptoe around him and be afraid to criticize or tell him what he can do better. So Nate Oats starts the process early. He gets those guys ready. This is what it's going to be like when they get to the NBA. And again, that's one of the things, they sell that as much as anything in recruiting. I heard Nate talk about that at the Birmingham Tip-Off Club a few weeks ago. They've been really good in that area. So if you can't handle that, then you can't handle high-level basketball in the SEC and forget about handling high-level basketball in the NBA. Look at the way Nate Oats talked about Mark Sears last year, one of the greatest scorers in Alabama history. And he didn't hesitate to let Mark Sears know when he wasn't giving max effort. So I think LeBaron will handle it, and I would fully expect in the A&M game and beyond, you will see a better LeBaron Filan at both ends of the floor.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great parallel you have between Filan and Mark Sears and how Nate Oats is approaching talking about his best player in public. And we'll see if Filan's able to respond the same way that Mark Sears did, who obviously engineered another deep run for Alabama last year. So I want to ask you about off the court now, Kevin. Former Auburn coach Bruce Pearl, he recently said that the NCAA should consider banning Alabama's basketball team from the NCAA tournament for Charles Bediako rejoining the team. A lot of people have obviously pointed out that that's rich coming from a guy with his own past NCAA troubles. But I just wonder, what do you think of what Pearl had to say? Let's say, one, the substance of it, and next, the maybe considering the messenger who's delivering a statement like that.
Bruce Pearl's comment on that situation will carry as much weight as my opinions on Israel and Gaza, which is to say, 0 weight. It sounds cute. It's a nice soundbite. And obviously, and look, he prefaced it by saying, well, look, I know this is going to sound like me as the former Auburn coach saying these things. You are the former Auburn coach. So anything you say about Alabama is going to be filtered through that lens. Not to mention, this has already been adjudicated. They're not going to be penalized for playing Charles Bediako. They're just not. It's in the temporary restraining order. If he's granted the preliminary injunction, it will say the same. And Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, told Pat Forty of Sports Illustrated just in the last 24 hours that there are reasons why you don't penalize people who beat you in a lawsuit. There are good reasons for that. So get that out of your head, anti-Alabama folks. Alabama's not going to have to forfeit any games it wins with Charles Bediako under the TRO or under the preliminary injunction again if he is granted that.
Yeah, it's tough. And again, like when you're considering who's saying that, it's just hilarious. Certainly to Alabama fans, but obviously to most college basketball fans who are familiar with Bruce Pearl in his role in the NCAA. But at the same time, Alabama, I think, in the eyes of a lot of people who watch this sport, I mean, Nate Oats called the loss to Florida an embarrassment, but a lot of people consider this whole Bediako experiment, as you wrote about, an embarrassment, and they don't like it. I just wonder, Kevin, what do you think, just generally? And I know it's way more complex than that. There's a lot of moving parts here, and it's not just Alabama. And Alabama is trying to do what is legal within the rules of this sport and the NCAA, and we'll find out as they parse all that out. But do you think what's happening with Bediako, as a basketball fan and as somebody who's watched college basketball for as long as you have, is this okay? Are you good with it? Is it just the way things are now, and you're just gonna watch it unfold?
No, no, and no. No, I'm not okay with it. No, it's not good for college basketball, and no, it's not the way things should be or the way things are, because there is one fundamental difference between Charles Bediako playing college basketball after playing in the G League and James Najee at Baylor, Philip Jovic at Auburn, Ruben Dominguez at Texas A&M, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There is only one current college basketball player who played college basketball, voluntarily left college basketball to put his name in the draft early, stayed in the draft past the deadline to withdraw, which by rule makes you ineligible to ever play college basketball again. That is a hard and fast rule, and he is the only player to which those circumstances apply. So as much as his lawyers are trying to equate all of these players in the SEC and beyond that played pro ball in Europe or in the G League, and the NCAA now has granted eligibility to play college basketball, different circumstances. Bediako it's a party of one. He's the only one to which those circumstances apply. He's the only player that put his name in the draft, stayed in the draft after playing college basketball, and then wanted to come back. And has come back and is playing thanks to a friendly judge in Tuscaloosa.
Whatever do you mean by that, Kevin? I don't understand.
Well, look, there's a reason that all of these players have retained counsel, and the counsel has filed these suits in state court, like Joey Aguilar at Tennessee in Knoxville, for example, the quarterback who wants to play a sixth year of college football, I think it is. I lost track. But they know this is the way to go. This is what works. And it's been successful, and it probably will continue to be successful, which is why in my opinion, my humble opinion, what's best for college basketball is that the NCAA be able to set its own eligibility standards. Whatever they're going to be, they should be able to set them. And if they are not able to set them, we might as well pack up the peach baskets. I mean, what's the point? College sports is dead at that point. If the NCAA can't fundamentally decide who can play college sports, then they can't govern college sports. Now, that may make some people happy. I don't think that's what's best for college basketball. I don't think it's good that James Najee is playing after playing in the G League. Now, the European pros, it's a little different. It's different overseas. They don't have the same educational system. They're playing in club systems from a very young age. So they're pros in name, but they're not pros in the sense that G League guys are pros. Now, some of them are. Some of them played at high-level pro leagues, and I don't necessarily think they should be playing college basketball either. And I don't think guys that are the age of Chad Baker-Mazara should be playing college basketball either.
Yeah, it's insane. It's wild to watch, and in some ways you kind of have to sit back and say it is what it is. But like, I think people are anxiously awaiting some sort of regulation, whether it goes back to what it was. It probably never will. But just to think, like, people who are the ages that you're talking about, and people who are suing to play for a sixth and seventh and eighth year of eligibility, it's just totally wild, and it's just crazy now too that Alabama is at the center of this universe and causing the ripple effect that it is. All right, Kevin, we'll get you out of here on this. Again, I go back to the big picture. What is Alabama's ceiling this season? If they make it to March Madness, obviously anything can happen. They could very well easily go on another run, but do we know what kind of team this is right now?
No, because we have not seen the full Alabama team for any length of time, and certainly not with Charles Bediako in the lineup. If they can get everybody healthy, and Aiden Holloway is there every night, and LeBaron Philon's there every night, and Amari Allen is there every night, and they are close to 100%, as close as you can be at this point in the season and moving forward. I said this when they brought in Bediako. I thought that they just raised their ceiling to a potential Final Four team. I'm wavering on that a little bit after watching what we've seen in the 3 games with Bediako, fully acknowledging they haven't been fully healthy in that time. But I think their ceiling's pretty high. If, again, all of those things come together and you see the full roster in close to full health for an extended period of time, even if it's only for a couple of weeks, I think this team could make a run in the NCAA tournament. And let's remember this, Ben. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, okay? Let me be an angel of hope here for Alabama fans. Each of the last 3 years, you actually referenced this earlier, each of the last 3 years, Alabama has lost a game by 20 points or more in late January, mid to late February, even last year in March in the SEC tournament. And each of those years, they rebounded from those ugly, bad losses to become the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament and win both the SEC regular season and tournament championships in 2023. In 2024, they had 2 20-point losses on the road in the SEC. All they did was go to the Final Four. And last year, they had that ugly loss to Florida in the SEC tournament, and they went to the Elite Eight. So there is hope. This is basketball. March matters more than anything else. The rest of it matters, but March matters more. And I imagine that Alabama can make a run in March if they can keep everybody healthy. And this new friendly judge in Tuscaloosa says, yeah, Charles Bediako can play.
And even if Bediako plays, as long as they don't run into Florida in March, I think Alabama is capable of anything.
Yes.
Read
try to get a temporary injunction so you don't have to play Florida in the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament. That might be the most important thing Alabama could do legally.
Get a PRO, a permanent restraining order against Florida, and avoid them at all costs. All right, Kevin, hey, read his work on AL.com. Check out his podcast, Scarbo Knows. He's one of the best, folks. Kevin Scarbinsky, thank you again.
Thanks, Ben.